Hi there, this is Ben at Numbergroup, here to go over a new feature we've just launched into the Luna PBX system, which is the ability to queue your calls in the system. So in order to configure this new feature, you basically need to have a subscription to the Luna PBX, and the queuing is actually done within the groups section. So what you would normally do is you would log into Self-Care as normal, you go to Luna PBX, which will take you through to this screen here. You click on groups, and you can see I've already got a group in here, but in order to demonstrate how to set this up from scratch, I'll create a new group. So we have a new group here, and obviously you can see we've got the default name, so we'll just give it a name. Office queue. Okay. Now, that's obviously there, and at the bottom you'll see there's a new option which says queuing. Queue calls into this group. Now first of all we'll just click save just to save that name change there. We'll also change this to do not automatically flash. I'll explain why later on, and click save there. So let's say we want to enable queuing. The first thing obviously you need to do is specify people who are in this queue, and you do this by entering them into the extension list here. So we'll just go through and we'll just put in some random extensions. So there we go. We've got 3 extensions in this queue. Once again, let's just save it. So that's now saved in the system. Bearing in mind, some of the features or options here will not apply when you enable the queue, but in certain circumstances they will, and I will go through the ring durations and so forth later on. So the next stage is to enable the queue. So we change that to yes, and you'll now see that we have a lot more options just appear at the bottom here. And this is basically where you control and basically where you configure the various options for your call queue. Now I'll go through each option as they appear, and to obviously try and give you a bit more information about how they work and how you can configure this. So the first option is the queue join prompt. So this is basically a prompt that's played to callers when they join your queue. Now it's not necessarily when they call through to your number, because obviously the number needs to be pointed through to your queue. So in this case you could have like an introductory message when they call your number, and then they could have a supplementary message when they join your queue, or alternatively you could just have the one message on your queue. That's totally up to you. As with all of our prompts, you assign them by going through to the prompt system. You choose the prompt from the list. I've already got some which I've uploaded on here myself, so I think it is this one here, so we'll click OK. So now we see that there is a prompt there. Once again, after every change, click save to make sure that the changes are applied. The queue holding prompt is the music that is played to people while they are in the queue. Now once again, you can choose from the list of music we have available. We do have quite a large amount of music which we have recently updated. Please feel free to choose any music you like. I'm going to go for Ed Sheeran. There we go, click OK. Now the next option down is the prioritized callers. Now the priority system is quite complicated, and it's utilized via the webhook system via an integration, the integration being this variable here. If you're not familiar with the webhook system or how it works, I would advise you to leave this feature alone because it can be quite complicated. I will do a separate video which goes through the ins and outs and how to implement this, however, so people that do want to use it can obviously find out how to do so. The next option down is periodic announcements. Now this is basically announcements which are played periodically to the people who are waiting in the queue, obviously to give them indications of what's going on. So you can either choose to have no periodic announcements, you can obviously choose to have them every 30 seconds, minute, 90 seconds, or every 2 minutes. Now we'll go for 30 seconds. And you've also got the timing. I would advise to do it from the end of the period, because that will basically mean that after the first 30 seconds the first periodic announcement is played. If you have it set to from start of call, basically as soon as they join the queue and they've had the queue join prompt played, a periodic announcement will then play. So basically they'll just have 2 prompts in a row, or sometimes 3 depending on what options you have further below. So, but obviously the choice is yours. You can have it set up however you like. And obviously these 3 options here are where you specify what periodic prompts you want to be played. So once again, I'll just go through and we'll have 1 in there. So that's just my periodic prompt to basically say, please hold the line, we'll answer your call shortly. Now the next options down here is the position announcements. So you can basically have the system announce the queue or the caller's position in the queue if there is more than one person queuing or waiting for their call to be answered. So we'll just click save to have that there. Now, bearing in mind, you have to have the periodic announcements enabled and at least one periodic prompt assigned for the position announcements to work. If you don't, then these will not work. So it is essential that if you want to have the position announcements, you have to enable periodic announcements and have at least one periodic announcement assigned to it. Okay. The next option down is the allow queue mute option. Now this basically allows you to give callers the choice to either turn off the music or not. Now if you'd rather not give them the option, just leave the option set to no. If you'd like to enable that option, change it to mute with star, unmute with star star, and then click save. Now the next two options are obviously linked in with this option here. So if you have that set to no, you don't need to set these two options here. If you have this enabled, these two optional options are here. So you can either have a prompt to say basically how to pause the call the call music at the start of your call. The queue mute option prompt is that one. That actually plays immediately after the queue join prompt. So if you want to have the system play a customized prompt for that, you basically set that prompt there. If you don't set anything in there, the system will play the generic default one, which we already have pre-recorded. The next option down is the queue mute confirmation prompt. So once the caller has basically placed the call or muted the call, they will hear the announcement to say you have placed the call on. You've placed the call music on hold. If they then press star star on their phone, the music will then reinitialize, but they will not get another prompt. That prompt is only played when they actually mute the call. Once again, you don't have to put anything in there if you don't want to. We have a generic one that's already assigned on the system. However, you want to assign your own one, you're more than welcome to do so. Okay, but we don't want this option, so we'll set that to no. The final options down here basically determine the behavior of the queue itself. So you can actually choose to have the queue size. So if you don't want to have more than, say, 10 callers queuing in your queue at any one time, you can set a maximum queue size there. And then the maximum queue size exceeded prompt, so if you have any callers that come through and they basically cannot join the queue because the maximum queue size has been reached, then that prompt is played to them. Incidentally, when that occurs, the system will follow the number routing options you have set on the number screen. So we'll do that in a minute. We'll go back and look at the numbers and show you basically how you can route through to this. And it's also the maximum queue waiting time. Once again, you can specify how long you can have people queuing, so anywhere from a minute to 90 minutes. Now obviously if they're waiting longer than that amount of time, the system will then play the maximum queue time exceeded prompt. Once again, you don't have to set these. These will basically, we have default prompts already set, so they'll automatically play, but if you want to have your own customized ones, then you can do so, and they will obviously play to the callers. Once again, if this basically timeout is reached, so basically a customer is queuing for more than 10 minutes, that prompt will then be played, and the system will then route the call back to the NTS system, which obviously I'll go over now. And that is basically how the system works. So the only other thing I should possibly mention is the position announcement will only work if there is more than one person in the queue. If there is only one person in the queue, obviously there's not multiple people in there, so no announcements will be made because obviously there's only one person queuing in there. And typically the announcement is only played from position 2 upwards. So if you're number 1 in the queue, so basically the next person to be answered, you will not hear the position announcements. If you're position 2 or upwards, you will hear the announcements. So that's basically it. So once you're done, you click save, and that is now your queue enabled. So if everyone that calls through will basically place into a queue, and the extensions listed here will ring based upon, and obviously you'll have the options. These are what play to the customers, and these will basically ring accordingly. Now, you can change the ring durations here. So the ring whole group, that will basically is ignored because obviously this is the timer that is used. However, ring extension 4 can be set, I would advise you to leave it for 20 seconds, because what this will basically do is it means that the queue will update every 20 seconds. So every 20 seconds, your phone will stop ringing and then start ringing again, and that basically allows the queue to re-update what is sent through to the phone to ensure that the call information being sent through is correct at that time. Now, I did mention this function earlier on, which is the group silent BLF key. Now, this basically allows you to answer the call via a busy lamp function key. So if you don't want to have phones ringing constantly, if you've got people queuing, you can set the system to basically time out or flash basically the light before the phones start ringing. Now, most people would not use this feature, which is why I would advise you to leave it do not automatically flash. So that is what I've done here. And that is pretty much it. Obviously, if you want to if you want to record the calls, you can set this to yes if you have the necessary subscription on your account. Bearing in mind, they will all go to the media manager. They will not go out via email. Just obviously so you're aware of that. So if you want to obviously go back and look at the numbering side of things, once again that's fairly straightforward. So normally we'd go to numbers. So in this case, obviously you see you would just set the call to go through to a queue. So routes to PBX, you set your PBX if you've got more than one, and then you set the office queue, and then obviously you click save at the bottom. Your standard welcome prompts will still obviously function, so you'll have your pre-connect and post-connect prompt, and obviously the calling numbers options can still be set as well. You can obviously also set the ring for, but bearing in mind, if the call is connected into the queue, and that is set obviously to, that actually technically connects the call, so at that point the ring for will no longer work, because essentially we are connecting the call to the queue, so the call is no longer ringing. So that basic feature there will not make any difference to how long people can wait in the queue. However, if let's say the queue is full, you can specify other options here. So let's just say, for the sake of example, the queue is full. You could obviously have the calls then route to an alternative mobile number and on the outside world, and then that's how you would do it. So basically, if you set them to ring and turn, and based upon that order, what would happen is the system would route the call initially through to the queue. Obviously, if the queue was allowing people in, they would join the queue and obviously sit in the queue until either the call was answered or the queue wait time exceeded. If it was then exceeded, the system would then move on to this next configuration option here, so it would then route the call out to an external number. Obviously, this can be whatever setting you want it to be. I'm just trying to illustrate to you that there are multiple options, so if you're using the queue function, you can still use it with other network translation solutions that we offer. And that's pretty much it. That is obviously how we go through, and that's how you configure the queuing system. If you do have any questions or have any problems with the feature, then by all means please do get in touch with us at support@numbergroup.com and obviously outline what problems you're having, and we'll obviously go through with them with you and obviously try and get them sorted for you as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your time.